welcome to our second video lesson. So before we proceed, let us first review kung ano yung mga napag-usapan natin last video. So last video, we have discussed first the physical and chemical properties of atom. So under physical, meron dalawang category na yung una is the extensive physical property and the second one is the intensive physical property. Okay, the main difference of the two is yung isa doon, it depends on the quantity, no? While yung other is independent doon sa quantity. So after that, we've discussed the different separation techniques used para mapaghiwalay yung solid liquid, liquid and whatsoever. So yeah, yun yung mga na-discuss natin, and yung last part is chemical formulas or chemical symbols. So we've identified the informations that we could get given the chemical symbol. So in this particular lesson, actually continuation siya. So we will be talking about the atomic structure, formulas and names of compounds. Okay, so chill lang kayo dyan. Okay, now take a look at this atomic structure. So this is the visual representation kung ano ang nangyayari sa loob ng isang atoms. Okay, so let us identify the parts dito. So first, the red here na paikot-ikot dyan represents the electrons. So very good. So yung mga free moving dyan sa orbits, they are the electrons, and yung nasa loob na to, so it's called the nucleus, and inside the nucleus we have the proton and the neutron. Okay, so of course the blue line here, yun yung orbitals natin. Okay, so yan yung mga nasa atomic structure natin. So later on, we will discuss why it is important na alam natin kung anong nasa atomic structure. Okay? Next, so given the chemical symbol for He, so saan ba makikita ito? Nakikita naman ito sa lahat ng periodic table. It is represented as 2 and 4. So minsan may mga periodic table na baliktad yan, 4, 2. Okay, so pero alam niyo naman kung ano yung value nung isa versus dun sa isa. Okay, so now let's talk about the number 2 here. So the number 2 here is called the atomic number, and the number 4 here represents the atomic mass. So ano ba yung atomic number and atomic mass? So atomic number represents the number of protons. So kung titingnan natin yung atoms, kung titingnan natin yung atom ng helium, meron siyang dalawang proton. Okay? So what about the atomic mass? So ano yung nasa atomic mass? So atomic mass is the sum of the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. Okay? So basically, the formula for the atomic mass is the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. So take note also in that most of the time, no, hindi lahat, no, pero madalas class, that the number of protons is also equal to the number of electrons. So alam niyo naman yan, no? So based on that, we can say that since the number of protons is 2 and the atomic mass is 4, we can say that the number of neutrons for the helium atom is equal to 2. Kasi using this formula that, wait, nawala yung mouse natin. Okay, so using this formula, so atomic mass is 4 and the number of protons is 2. Therefore, the number of neutrons, you will subtract 2 sa ating atomic mass, you'll get 2. Okay? So Always remember that, huh? Next. So now, let's interpret oxygen. So another chemical symbol, oxygen. So as you can see, nagbaliktad ngayon yung position ni atomic mass and atomic number. Pero kahit naman magbaliktad yan, madali nyo naman ma-identify kung sino si atomic mass and atomic number. Si atomic number is less than the atomic mass, of course. Okay, so in here, going back to the formula, so based on the given chemical symbol, we can say that the atomic number is 8. Therefore, this is also the number of protons, and the atomic mass is 16. Okay? So using the formula that the atomic mass is equal to the number of protons plus the number of neutrons, we can say that the number of neutrons is equal to 8 for oxygen. Okay? And also the number of electrons. So, balance. 8 yung protons, 8 yung neutrons, 8 yung electrons. Okay? So now, okay, so why are we talking about the number of protons and number of neutrons? Okay, so it is because for us to better understand what isotopes are. Okay, so based on definition, isotopes are atoms of the same element which contains the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you've encountered this during your junior high school, pero i-discuss natin sila here, okay? Take a look at this oxygen. So, a while ago, nakita natin yung the most abundant oxygen isotope, which is the oxygen 16. Okay, so in oxygen 16, since 16 yan, and the number of protons is 8. Tama? So, protons is 8. Therefore, the number of neutrons is also 8. So, pasensyahin nyo na yung sulat ko. Nagmamouse lang ako. So, proton is 8 and neutron is 8. That is for the most common oxygen isotope. Okay? So, as you can see, balance yan. Pero, look at this second isotope, oxygen 17. So, if we will go back to the definition of the isotope, so isotopes are same element, same number of proton, pero different number of neutrons. Okay? So, in oxygen 17, we also have 8 protons. Sorry, sa 8. And for the oxygen 18, we also have 8 protons. Okay? Nagkakaiba sa number of neutrons. So, since the 17 here, 16, 17, baliktad, 16, 17, and 18 represents the atomic mass. So, to get the number of neutrons, we will just subtract the atomic mass to the number of protons. So, for oxygen 17, the number of neutrons is equal to, so 17 minus 8, that's 9. And for the oxygen 18, the number of neutrons is 10. Okay? So, nagpakahirap pa tayo. Bilangin nyo yung green. Yung green yung neutrons, yung red yung protons. So, yan. So, yan yung mga isotopes. So, constant or hindi nagbago yung number of protons, pero nagbago yung number of neutrons, thus, nagbago rin yung number of atomic mass. Okay? So, next. These are some of the isotopes ng particular elements and their atomic mass. So, as you can see, boron 10 yung atomic mass niya. Boron 11, with the addition of 1 neutron, nagbago yung atomic mass natin. Okay? So, and so on. Carbon 12, carbon 13, oxygen, and so on. So, these are some of the elements and their atomic mass. So isotopes have the same chemical properties but slightly different physical properties. Actually, class, I've read some books, no? Parang ang may konting slight difference lang talaga sa physical property, and sobrang hindi mo na masyadong manonotice. So, you might be wondering, sir, kung ganon, ano yung difference ng mga isotopes from each other? Okay, so that is a very good question. Kung pares lang naman sila ng physical and chemical properties, anong difference ng dalawa? Okay, so kung walang difference sa chemical and super slight difference lang sa physical property, no? Dito medyo malaki yung difference. Okay, so yung mga isotopes, merong isa sa kanila stable at merong isa sa kanila hindi stable. Okay, so let's talk about that. So a stable isotope is any of two or more forms of an element whose nuclei contains the same number of protons and electrons, but a different number of neutrons. Stable isotopes remain unchanged indefinitely, but unstable radioactive isotopes undergo spontaneous disintegration. An isotopically labeled compound has one or more of its atoms enriched in an isotope. Okay, so let's talk about why nagkakaroon ng disintegration sa mga unstable atom. Okay? Now, let's discuss why nagkakaroon ng unstable isotope. Okay, so mag-focus tayo sa dalawang extreme, no? Sa magkabilang dulo. So, okay, carbon 12 and carbon 14. So, carbon 12 is the stable one and carbon 14 is the unstable one. Okay, so carbon 12, bakit siya stable? One of the reasons or the main reason actually is because stable siya kasi balance. Balance yung number of protons, balance yung number of neutrons, at balance yung number of electrons. So meaning yung nucleus dun sa atom, since balance, naho-hold niya yung sarili niya. Okay? So, unlike kay carbon 14, so si carbon 14, so as you can see, you have 2 extra neutrons. So, 6 plus 2, you have 8 neutrons, and you have 6 protons. So, yung imbalance na yun, class, kasi ang nucleus, actually lahat naman, no? Law of thermodynamics, palaging kukunin niya yung kung saan siya balanse. Okay? Laging ang system, hahanap siya ng paraan para maging balance. For example, ni law of thermodynamics, kapag naglabas ka ng malamig na tubig, anong nangyayari sa malamig na tubig? Okay, nilabas mo sa room. So, ang mangyayari, class, since there is a thermal imbalance between the room temperature and the water na nilabas mo, ang gagawin ng system, i-even niya yun. Okay? Kaya ang mangyayari, yung konting init sa room temperature magta-transfer sa water until such time na si water magiging room temperature na. Okay? So, yun yung example. Ganun yung nangyayari kay carbon 14. So, since hindi balance yung number of protons and number neutrons, nag-undergo siya ng radioactive decay. So, it can be alpha, beta, gamma decay. No? Yan yung mga types of decay. So, ginagawa niya yun para dumating yung time, class, na yung carbon 14, yung number of protons niya is mag-equal sa number of neutrons. Pero class, as discussed, I'm sure familiar naman kayo dito, yung process na yun, it involves the release of energy. Okay? Kaya yung mga radioactive na yan, meron silang effect kasi nagre-release sila ng energy dun sa process na pag-decay. And by the way, carbon 14 is probably the most parang known isotope, no? Kasi ginagamit siya sa carbon dating. Okay, so carbon 14 has a half-life of 5,730 years. Ginagamit siya kapag gusto nilang malaman how old yung fossil na nahukay. So, titignan nila yung trace ng carbon-14. Okay? So, that's the reason kung bakit nagdidecay yan. Kasi hindi balance yung number of protons and number of neutrons. Okay? Next. So, ano ba uses ng mga radioactive isotopes? So, ayan yung mga some uses. So, food irradiation, archaeological dating, as mentioned, carbon dating using carbon-14, smoke detectors, radioactive tracers, and nuclear power plants. Ito, sobrang lakas na radioactive decay. Kaya nga yung mga nuclear power plants, meron silang radioactive waste, no? Actually, yun yung delikado yung waste kasi nga, na continuously nagdi-disintegrate, and dun sa process ng disintegration, nagre-release ng malakas na energy. Okay? So, these are some of the isotopes and their uses. So, no need to discuss this. You just have to memorize yung mga yan. Okay? So, these are the isotopes. Chemical formula and chemical structure. Okay, so, wag kayong malito sa molecular formula. It's also parang equivalent sa chemical formula. So, different books, different references, they use different names. Pero, isa lang naman ang meaning. So, chemical and molecular formula, same lang. So, na-discuss natin sa chemical formula na it's a representation of the molecule. No? So, in chemical or molecular formula, we can identify the types of atoms na involved dun sa molecule. No? So, yung type of atoms, tapos kung ilan number of atoms per type. No? For example, we have H2O. So, you have hydrogen and oxygen atoms. So, how many hydrogen atoms do we have for hydrogen? We have 2 and 1 oxygen atom. That's how we interpret chemical or molecular formula. Okay? So, next, we will introduce the structural formula. So, the structural formula for a compound, on the other hand, gives the same information as its molecular formula. So, the types and numbers of atoms in the molecule, but also shows how the atoms are connected in the molecule. Okay? So, not only the structural formula provides the similar information na makukuha kay molecular formula, meron siyang additional info which is the structure. So, it shows how the atoms are connected in the molecule. So, take a look at this example, methane. So, methane, ang chemical formula niya is CH4, and from that, we know that this particular chemical formula or methane has 1 carbon atom and 4 hydrogen atom. So, this is the chemical structure of methane. So, isang C, then isa lang carbon atom and 4 na H. Okay? So, methane can also be represented as a ball and stick and space filling model. So, pag ball and stick, ayan. So, 4 na white ball. So, yan yung ating mga hydrogen atom, and yung yung larger ball, the black one, represents the carbon atom. Okay? Or, it can also be represented in space filling model. So, para lang din siyang ball and stick without the stick. So, para lang siyang pinagdikit-dikit na ball. Okay? So, I think you just have to search ng mga different chemical structures, especially yung mga commonly used, no? Yung mga sugar, salt, para familiar kayo sa chemical structure nila. And pag nakuha mo naman yung chemical structure, you can already draw or illustrate the ball and stick and space filling model. Next, we have benzene. So, the chemical formula is C6H6. So, it has a 6 carbon atom and 6 hydrogen atom. So, ayan yung structural formula and our chemical structure. Ball and stick model for B and space filling model. Okay, so you just have to familiarize sa mga different commonly used chemicals with their chemical formula, tapos yung kanilang structural formula. Yung ball and stick and space filling, kaya nyo nang i-generate yan with the structural formula. Okay? Next, chemical nomenclature. Okay, so social, no? So naming lang yan. So it is a set of rules used for forming the names or terms in a particular field of art or sciences. So the primary function of chemical nomenclature is to ensure that a spoken or written chemical name leaves no ambiguity concerning to what chemical compound the name refers. So basically, we are studying this para pare-parehas tayo ng interpretation or pare-parehas tayo ng basa, pare-parehas yung meaning sa atin ng mga chemical formula. Okay? So, what are the rules? Okay, so these are the 4 rules for naming molecular compounds. Okay, so I'm pretty sure familiar na rin kayo dito. So, lang natin, i-review lang natin. So, yung una, yung last element, no, sa compound, palitan natin yung ending niya ng "ide". So, for example, if the last element sa compound is oxygen, yung ending ng oxygen is "gen", we will replace it by "ide". So, instead of oxygen, oxide siya. Okay? So, next, for number 2, so when naming molecular compounds, we are using prefixes. Okay? So, yung prefix nakadepende kung ilan yung subscript, number of atoms. Okay? So, ayan yung mga prefixes. 1 for mono, di, and so on. Which I believe familiar din kayo. Next, so if there is only one of the first element, you can drop the prefix. So, kung walang subscript dun sa unang element, no, kahit wala na siyang mono. For example, CO. So, kung babasahin mo yan, based sa rule number 2, it should be monocarbon monoxide. But since first element natin is carbon, tas wala siya, hindi na natin siya nilalagyan ng prefix. Okay? Pero if hindi mono yan, so meaning if it's C2O, it's a different story. Okay? Lalagyan na natin siya. So it's dicarbon oxide. So yung last medyo tricky ito, no? So basta pag masagwa siyang tignan, tinatanggal natin yung last. At hindi pala tignan. Kapag masagwang pakinggan, pag pinasa mo, we are actually removing the last letter, last vowel of the prefix. No? For example, monooxide. So, medyo may conflict. Dalawa yung O. So, you can remove yung isang O. So, instead of monooxide, it's monoxide. Okay? So, dito lang, pakiramdaman. Pag medyo masagwa, tanggalin mo yung isa. Okay? Okay, so let's try to name the following compounds given lang yung chemical formula or molecular formula. So, NO, based sa rule, since 1 lahat yan, na, so mono, we will be using mono. Kaso, since nasa una si nitrogen, tinatanggal natin yung mono kapag una yung element sa chemical formula. So, it's actually nitrogen monoxide. Okay? So, yung second one, N2O, monoxide din yung dulo niyan, pero mag-iiba yung unahan niya since meron na siyang 2 dyan. 2 na yung number of atoms ni nitrogen. So, this is dinitrogen monoxide. Next, S2Cl2. So, dalawa. So, 2 is di. So, this is disulfur dichloride. And last, Cl2 and O7. So, this is Cl is chlorine, kamukha nung third example. Oxygen, di is, ang tawag dito, di is for 2, and 7 is hepta. Pero, examine natin si hepta, no? So, heptaoxide, medyo masagwa, so, heptoxide. Okay? So, this is dichlorine, kasi dalawa, dichlorine, heptoxide. Okay? Sabi sa inyo, medyo tricky, no? Kung kailan mo tinatanggal yung isa. Basta masagwan tignan, tanggalin nyo. Okay? Next. This time, balik na rin natin. So, given tayo ng name, tapos ibigay natin yung chemical formula. So, sulfur dioxide, sulfur is S, dioxide, that's oxygen, di, 2, so this is SO2. Next, we have silicon tetraiodide. Silicon is Si, iodide, iodine, that's I, and tetra is 4. So, this is Si na maliit, tapos capital I, 4. Okay. So, next we have sulfur hexafluoride. So, sulfur is S. Wala naman nakalagay na prefix. So, S lang yan. Hexa, prefix ng 6. So, this is sulfur hexafluoride. So, this is SF6. Last, we have carbon and disulfide. So, sulfide from sulfur. Since this is di, so prefix of 2. So, this is CS2. Okay, so that's how we actually name the chemical formula. Pero, there are some chemical formula like water na hindi na H2O. Ang tawag na sa kanya is water. Yung name niya. Okay. So, ano pa ba? Salt, NaCl, and so on. Marami yan. No? Familiarize nyo na lang yung sarili nyo sa mga may common name. Next, empirical formula. Okay, let's talk about the empirical formula. So, this is a formula that gives the simplest whole number ratio of atoms in a compound. Okay? Whole number ratio of atoms in a compound. So, actually, sinusolve po si empirical formula. So, this will be our first topic na involved yung solving. Pero don't worry, madali lang ito. So, these are the steps para makuha natin yung empirical formula. So, first, if percentage yung given instead of mass, no, ng mga elements, we assume that the sample is 100 grams. That's the first thing to do. Check nyo if percentage. Kapag mass na kaagad yung given, no problem. Okay? Pero kapag percentage sila, we need to assume na yung sample is 100 grams. Actually, sa lahat ng chemistry subject, we assume 100 grams. Okay? Number 2, second step, use each element's molar mass to convert the grams of each element to moles. Okay? Alam niyo naman yung formula ni moles. Moles is mass over molar mass. So, titingnan niyo yung molar mass. So, I need your periodic table here. And your calculator also pala since magko-compute tayo. Okay? So, for number 2, convert the element's molar mass, the element's molar mass that can be seen in your periodic table to convert the mass into its number of moles. Okay? So, number 3, in order to find a whole number ratio, divide the moles of each element by whichever of the moles from step 2 is the smallest. So, kung ano yung makukuha nating smallest value sa step number 2, yun yung gagamitin nating divisor sa lahat. Okay? For number 4, step number 4, if all of the moles at this point are whole numbers, so, or very close, again, dito medyo nagra-round tayo, For example, if it's 3.98, that's considered na 4 na. Okay? Pag daw whole number na, lahat, the empirical formula can be written with the moles as the subscript of each element. So, kay number 4, pag hanggang step 4 ka lang kapag whole number na yung sagot after step 3. Okay? If hindi naman, if meron pang hindi whole number kay step 4, meron tayong additional step. Step number 5. So, paano natin gagawin whole number, no? So, we will think of a smallest number na kapag minultiply natin, mag-whole number. Okay? So, yung naisip nating smallest number will be multiplied sa lahat. Anyway, it won't affect naman yung mga whole number na. Okay? So, yung mga steps na to, mukha silang mahirap tandaan, pero kapag in-apply na natin sila, sobrang dali lang. Okay? So, let's try answering a problem. Problem number 1. So, a compound of iron and oxygen is analyzed and found to contain 69.94% of iron and 30.06% of oxygen. Find the empirical formula of the compound. Okay, so solution. I've written the given. So the given information na meron tayo right now is the percentage, no? For Fe, we have 69.94% and for oxygen, we have 30.06. Okay? Since percentage yung mga yan, so we will have step number 1. Okay? So step number 1, kung i-recall nyo, we will assume that the total sample is 100 grams. So if that is the case, we will just convert the percentage values to grams. So Fe is equal to 69.94 grams. Oxygen is 30.06 grams. So walang magic dyan, ha? I just multiplied 100 grams. Okay? Sa dalawa. And when you get the sum, this is also 100 grams. Okay? Next, step number 2. So yung grams na to must be converted to number of moles. Paano natin mako-convert to ng number of moles? By dividing this dun sa molar mass ng element. So, yung molar mass, makikita niya sa periodic table. Okay. So, for iron, Fe, so the mass is 69.4. As you can see. So, 69.4, yan yung mass natin. And sa periodic table nyo, class, i-check nyo, it's 55.85 grams. That's the molar mass. So, you just divide the two kasi magka-cancel yung grams of Fe. Matitira mole of Fe. So, just get the quotient. So, we'll get 1.252 mole of Fe. Okay? Just do the same kay oxygen. So, you have 30.06 grams of this is not Fe, no? Sorry. This is oxygen. Yan naman yung mga edit natin. This is oxygen. So, 30.06 grams of oxygen divided by the molar mass. So, the molar mass for oxygen is 16. So, get the quotient. So, it's 1.879 mole. Okay? So, for step number 3, kay step number 3 daw, yung makukuhang sagot kay step 2, choose the smallest. So, the smallest is 1.252. Tapos, i-divide natin silang dalawa sa 1.252. Okay? So, ito yung step number 3. So, divide both by the smallest result. So, 1.252 divided by 1.252, siya yung smallest, eh. So, 1 yan. Okay? And oxygen, 1.879 mole divided by 1.252, it's 1.5. You can try sa calculator nyo. Siguro baka may konting difference. Hindi yan saktong 1.5. Pero again, nagra-round ka. Na? Siguro, wag OE yung pag-round. Nearest hundreds siguro. Ne? Nearest hundreds, pwede mo nang i-round. So, since ang tawag dito, kay step 4, hanggang step 4 sana tayo kung whole number itong dalawa. Pero Fe lang yung whole number, which is 1. Oxygen is 1.5. So, hindi natatapos dyan yung ating solution. So, we need to make this 1.5 a whole number. Paano? So, we need to think of a number na pag minultiply sa kanya is maging whole number siya.
1.5.
And take note, smallest. So, the smallest number na pwedeng i-multiply sa 1.5 para maging whole number is 2. Okay? Kaso, hindi lang siya kay 1.5 i-multiply. Mamultiply din siya kay 1. Okay? So, 2 ang ating gagamitin. Galing ng pagka-drawing. So, 2 times 1, that's 2. Ayan. And 2 times 1.5, that's 3. Nag-additional step tayo. This 1 and 1.5, hindi yan yung final answer. Kasi, based sa definition ni empirical formula, kailangan whole number yan. Okay? So, multiply each of the moles by the smallest whole number that will convert each into a whole number. As mentioned a while ago, the smallest whole number na pwede is 2. 1, hindi pwede kasi hindi naman magiging whole number sa 1.5. So, 2. So, the answer therefore, so 2, 3 is Fe203. So, this is now the empirical formula based dun sa given natin kanina. Okay, that's how you solve for the empirical formula. Super dali lang, di ba? Next, example. Example number 2. So, a compound was analyzed and found to contain 13.5 grams of calcium, 10.8 grams of oxygen, and 0.675 grams of hydrogen. What is the empirical formula of the compound? So, unlike sa una nating example, dito, grams na. So, we will skip step 1 kasi naka-grams na. No need to multiply sa 100 grams. Okay? Huwag dodoble So, first thing, kailangan yung i-check yung given if naka-percentage or naka-grams. Pag percentage, step 1. Kapag grams na, no need. Step 2 na kagad. Okay? So, okay, step 2 na lang yan will be, we need to convert these grams into number of moles. Okay? Kasi yung solution natin. Ayan, convert to moles na kaagad. So, similar lang. Titignan nyo lang itong mga molar mass sa periodic table. I hope meron kayong periodic table or pwede nyo naman gamitin yung internet na. Ayan, yung mga molar mass. Just get the quotient, then, ayan yung magiging result. After lumabas ng result, choose the smallest. So, in this case, the smallest is 0.337. Tama? Okay, so, we will now divide lahat ng tatlong to sa 0.337. Okay? Okay, so divide natin. So, for CA, since sa kanya value yon, expect 1. For oxygen, 0.675 divided by 0.337, 2. And for hydrogen, although, kung titignan nyo, sobrang liit lang kasi ng difference, no? This is also almost equal to 2. So, nag-round na, no? I think dito nag-round din, no? So, since all of them whole number na, yan na yung ating empirical formula. Yan na yung mga number of moles. Yan na yung ratio. Okay? So, therefore, it's 1 mole for Ca, 2 moles for oxygen, and 2 moles for hydrogen, or pwede mong i-write. So, that concludes our lesson, the second video lesson. So, I hope you will be able to answer your LAS ngayon na natapos na. Again, if you have questions, you can ask sa group chat natin anytime. Okay? So, that's it. Thank you so much and prepare na ako for the video number 3. Thank you.